How she laughed at his human armor. Part 1. The arena floor was slick with purple blood from the previous match. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the fighting circle, watching as maintenance drones cleaned the mess left by two Krillian warriors who had torn each other apart for sport. The crowd above roared with anticipation, their alien voices creating a symphony of clicks, growls, and harmonics that would have driven most humans mad. Jake adjusted his armor one final time. The standard-issue human combat gear looked pathetic compared to what he had seen in the previous fights. While other species wore gleaming energy shields, powered exoskeletons that moved like liquid metal, or bioorganic armor that grew and adapted in real time, Jake wore what looked like ancient plate mail with a few technological additions. The armor was thick, clunky, and made him look like a medieval knight who had stumbled into a space station. Gray metallic plates covered his torso, arms, and legs, held together by visible bolts and joints. A simple heads-up display flickered in his helmet visor, showing basic vital signs and threat assessments. No energy shields, no adaptive camouflage, no gravity manipulation, just good old-fashioned human engineering. "The human competitor enters the arena!" The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium in Universal Standard, followed by translations in 17 different languages. Jake walked into the center of the fighting circle, his boots clanking against the metal floor with each step. The crowd's reaction was immediate and predictable. Laughter erupted from the stands like a wave breaking against rocks. Chittering insect-like beings pointed at him with their multiple arms. Crystalline entities chimed in frequencies that translated to mockery. Even the usually stoic rock people of Granite Prime seemed to vibrate with amusement. But the loudest laugh came from directly above him. Princess Zarathiel of the Veltar Empire sat in the royal viewing box, her silver skin shimmering under the arena lights. She was beautiful in the way that only Veltar royalty could be, with perfectly symmetrical features, large violet eyes, and hair that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her own armor was a masterpiece of Veltar technology, appearing as nothing more than a second skin that pulsed with inner light. "Is this some kind of joke?" Princess Zarathiel's voice carried clearly across the arena, enhanced by the public address system. Her laughter was musical but cruel. "The humans sent a museum piece to fight in the Galactic Combat Championships? That armor looks like something my ancestors would have discarded 1,000 years ago." The crowd laughed harder at her words. Jake could hear species from across the galaxy joining in the mockery. The betting displays around the arena showed his odds dropping to astronomical levels. No one was putting money on the human. Jake stood in the center of the arena, letting the laughter wash over him. He had expected this. Humans were newcomers to galactic society, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most alien species saw them as primitive, aggressive, and hopelessly behind in technology. "The human's opponent enters the arena," the announcer called out. The laughter died as something truly terrifying emerged from the opposite entrance. Warlord Kethvar of the Saurian Dominion was 9 feet of pure nightmare. His species had evolved from predators that made Earth's extinct dinosaurs look like house pets. Massive muscles bulged under armor that seemed to be grown rather than built, shifting and adapting as he moved. Energy coursed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Kethvar's 4 arms each ended in claws that could slice through starship hulls. His elongated skull housed a brain that had been enhanced with combat algorithms from birth. Most terrifying of all were his eyes, black as the void between stars, which fixed on Jake with the intensity of a hunter who had never lost a kill. "Look at the size difference," Princess Zarathiel commented, her voice now carrying a note of concern that surprised Jake. "Surely this is not a fair match." The arena referee, a floating mechanical construct with sensors that could detect cheating at the molecular level, announced the rules. This is a combat trial by single combat. Victory condition is incapacitation or surrender of the opponent. Lethal force is permitted. Competitors may use any equipment they brought into the arena. External assistance is forbidden. Jake checked his armor systems one more time. Everything was green across the board. His weapons system showed ready. The small fusion reactor in his backpack hummed quietly, providing power to his suit's basic functions. Kethvar roared, a sound that made the arena walls vibrate. His armor responded by brightening, energy patterns racing across its surface like living lightning. The crowd cheered, clearly knowing they were about to witness a massacre. "Begin," the referee announced. Kethvar moved faster than something that large had any right to move. His forearms became blurs as he charged across the arena, claws extended, a roar of bloodlust echoing from his throat. Jake did not run. He did not dodge. He planted his feet and raised his arms, letting Kethvar's claws strike his armor. The sound was like a bell being struck by a hammer. Sparks flew as Kethvar's energy-enhanced claws raked across Jake's chest plate. The force of the impact sent Jake sliding backward across the arena floor, his boots leaving deep grooves in the metal. But he remained standing. Kethvar looked at his claws in confusion. They should have torn through the human's primitive armor like paper. Instead, they had barely scratched the surface. The Saurian's enhanced mind began calculating new attack vectors, analyzing the armor's composition and looking for weak points. Jake straightened up, checking his armor's status display. A few minor stress indicators, but nothing serious. He looked up at Princess Zarathiel in the viewing box and saw that she had stopped laughing. Her violet eyes were wide with surprise. "Interesting," she murmured, leaning forward in her seat. Kethvar attacked again, this time focusing his assault on Jake's helmet. Two of his arms grabbed Jake's shoulders, while the other two hammered at his head with pile-driver force. Each blow would have shattered stone, but Jake's helmet held firm. Jake let the Saurian exhaust himself for a moment, then grabbed two of Kethvar's wrists. The Saurian's eyes widened as he realized the human was not just surviving his attacks, but was actually strong enough to hold him. With a smooth motion, Jake headbutted Kethvar directly in the face. The human's armored helmet struck the Saurian's elongated skull with a sound like a gunshot. Kethvar staggered backward, purple blood streaming from his nostrils. The arena fell silent. No one had expected the human to fight back so effectively. Princess Zarathiel stood up in her viewing box, her hands pressed against the transparent barrier. Kethvar shook his head to clear it, then activated his armor's full combat mode. Energy surged across its surface, and the Saurian began to glow like a small star. The temperature in the arena rose noticeably as his armor's power systems reached maximum output. "Now we shall see," Kethvar growled, his voice distorted by the energy field surrounding him. "Let us test this human armor against the fury of a Saurian warrior." He launched himself into the air, all four arms raised above his head, energy crackling around his claws like miniature lightning storms. The crowd held its breath as he came down toward Jake like a falling meteor. Jake looked up at the descending Saurian, then did something that made Princess Zarathiel gasp in surprise. He smiled, then he reached for the release catches on his armor. She laughed at his human armor, Part 2. The armor fell away from Jake's body in carefully engineered sections, each piece hitting the arena floor with a metallic clang that echoed through the suddenly silent stadium. What emerged from within was not what anyone expected. Jake Morrison stood revealed as a baseline human in a simple black bodysuit, no taller than 6 feet, with brown hair and unremarkable features. But as Kethvar descended toward him like a living weapon, something extraordinary happened. Jake moved. He didn't just dodge or step aside. He flowed like water, his body bending in ways that should have been impossible for a creature with a rigid skeleton. Kethvar's energy-enhanced claws passed through empty air as Jake twisted beneath him, the human's movements so fluid they seemed almost liquid. The Saurian warrior crashed into the arena floor where Jake had been standing, his claws gouging deep furrows in the reinforced metal. He spun around, confusion and rage warring in his black eyes as he searched for his opponent. Jake was standing 10 feet away, completely relaxed, his hands hanging loosely at his sides. He wasn't even breathing hard. "What?" Princess Zarathiel whispered from her viewing box. Her violet eyes were fixed on the human, trying to understand what she was seeing. "How did he move like that?" The crowd was equally confused. Murmurs rippled through the stands in dozens of languages as beings tried to process what they had witnessed. The human had shed his armor and somehow become faster, not slower. Kethvar roared in frustration and charged again, his 4 arms working in perfect coordination to create a web of death that should have been impossible to escape. His enhanced mind calculated 17 different attack patterns, each one designed to account for every possible evasion route. But Jake wasn't evading in any predictable way. His body seemed to exist in spaces between the attacks, flowing around Kethvar's claws like smoke around a mountain. The human's movements were economical, precise, and utterly without wasted effort. The armor was not protection, Princess Zarathiel realized aloud, her voice carrying in the stunned silence of the arena. It was a restraint. Jake ducked under a horizontal swipe that would have taken his head off, then flowed upward as Kethvar's lower arms tried to grab his legs. For a moment, the human seemed to be dancing with the massive Saurian, his movements turning the brutal combat into something almost artistic. Then Jake struck back. His first punch landed on Kethvar's solar plexus with surgical precision. The impact transmitted through the Saurian's energy armor as if it wasn't there, causing Kethvar to double over in pain. Before the warrior could recover, Jake's knee came up to meet his descending face. The sound of the impact was wet and final. Kethvar's enhanced bones, designed to withstand massive trauma, cracked under the force of the blow. Purple blood sprayed across the arena floor as the Saurian warrior collapsed backward. But Jake wasn't finished. Moving with the same fluid grace he had shown while dodging, he followed Kethvar's fall, his fists striking vital points with mechanical precision. Each blow was delivered with exactly the right amount of force to cause maximum damage while conserving energy. The crowd watched in horrified fascination as the small human systematically dismantled a warrior who had been undefeated in 43 previous combat trials. Jake's movements were so fast that most spectators could only see the results of his strikes, not the strikes themselves. Kethvar tried to activate his armor's emergency protocols, systems designed to flood his body with combat stimulants and override his pain receptors. But Jake seemed to anticipate each attempt, his strikes targeting the armor's neural interfaces with uncanny accuracy. "Stop!" Princess Zarathiel whispered, then louder, "Stop!" But Jake didn't stop. Not until Kethvar's armor powered down completely and the Saurian warrior lay unconscious on the arena floor, his breathing shallow but steady. Jake stood over his defeated opponent, not even breathing hard. His black bodysuit was unmarked except for a few spots of purple blood that weren't his own. He looked up at Princess Zarathiel in the viewing box, and for a moment their eyes met across the distance. "Victor! The human competitor, Jake Morrison," the referee announced, its mechanical voice breaking the stunned silence. The crowd erupted. Some beings cheered in appreciation of the skill they had witnessed. Others roared in outrage, unable to accept that a primitive human had defeated one of the galaxy's premier warriors. The betting displays around the arena went into chaos as automated systems struggled to calculate payouts for what had been considered an impossible outcome. Princess Zarathiel stared down at Jake, her mind racing. She had studied human history and culture as part of her diplomatic education, but this was something the files had never mentioned. Humans were supposed to be technologically inferior, reliant on crude tools and simple weapons. "Your Highness," Her aide whispered urgently. "The medical teams report that Kethavar will recover fully. The human strikes were precise enough to incapacitate without causing permanent damage." Precise. She repeated the word softly. "He could have killed Kethavar at any point during that fight, couldn't he?" "It appears so, Your Highness." Jake began walking toward the exit, but the referee's voice stopped him. "Competitor Morrison, you have advanced to the championship round. Your final opponent will be determined by tonight's remaining matches." Jake nodded and continued walking. As he passed under Princess Zarathiel's viewing box, he stopped and looked up at her again. "Your Highness," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the arena's acoustics, "you laughed at my armor." "I did," she admitted, her voice amplified by the arena's systems so everyone could hear. It appeared primitive and crude. It was, Jake agreed. But sometimes the most advanced technology isn't what you wear. Sometimes it's what you are. With that, he walked out of the arena, leaving Princess Zarathiel staring after him with questions she couldn't answer. In her private chambers that evening, Princess Zarathiel called up every file the Veltar Empire had on human biology and combat capabilities. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans were persistence hunters, evolved from predators who hunted their prey not by being faster or stronger, but by being more enduring. They could run for days without stopping, could track wounded animals across vast distances, could survive injuries that would kill most other species. But that wasn't the terrifying part. The terrifying part was what human civilization had done to suppress these abilities. For thousands of years, humans had been building more and more comfortable lives for themselves. They had created machines to do their hunting, devices to enhance their strength, vehicles to carry them across distances. They had, in effect, been slowly restraining their own capabilities in pursuit of an easier existence. The armor Jake had worn wasn't just physical protection. It was a symbol of technological dependence, a way of limiting human potential to make them feel normal in a galaxy of aliens who relied on external enhancements. But underneath all that technology, underneath all that civilization, humans were still what they had always been. They were hunters who had never stopped hunting. They had just forgotten what they were hunting for. Princess Zarathiel closed the files and stared out the window at the stars. Tomorrow night, Jake Morrison would fight in the championship round against whatever warrior emerged victorious from the remaining matches. And for the first time in her life, she found herself hoping that a human would win. She also found herself wanting to understand exactly what else humans were capable of when they stopped pretending to be something they weren't. She laughed at his human armor. Part 3. The championship arena was larger than the previous fighting circle, designed to accommodate the most spectacular battles in galactic sports. Princess Zarathiel sat in the royal box. But this time, she was not alone. Representatives from 17 different species had requested permission to observe the humans' final match, and the betting syndicates had suspended all wagering after Jake's odds had shifted too dramatically for their systems to handle. Jake entered the arena without his armor, wearing only the simple black bodysuit he had revealed the night before. The crowd's reaction was different this time. There was no laughter, only a tense anticipation that seemed to make the very air electric. His opponent emerged from the opposite entrance, and Princess Zarathiel felt her breath catch in her throat. Champion Vex-High of the Synthetic Collective was not technically alive. It was a perfect fusion of organic neural tissue and mechanical systems, designed by a species that had transcended biological limitations thousands of years ago. Standing 8 feet tall, its body was a work of art in chrome and living metal that flowed like liquid while maintaining impossible strength. Vex-High had never been defeated. Its reaction times were measured in nanoseconds. Its strength could bend starship hull plates, and its intelligence was enhanced by quantum processors that could analyze and counter any fighting style within seconds of first contact. "This is madness," muttered Ambassador Krex of the Hive Worlds from his position near the princess. That synthetic has defeated champions from 40 different species. It learns and adapts faster than any organic mind can comprehend. Princess Zarathiel didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on Jake as he walked calmly to the center of the arena. She had spent the entire night studying human biology and psychology, but the more she learned, the more questions she had. "Competitors, prepare for championship combat," the referee announced. "This match will continue until one participant is unable or unwilling to continue." Vexhi's head turned toward Jake with mechanical precision. Its voice, when it spoke, was a harmony of synthetic tones that somehow conveyed both curiosity and calculation. "Human, I have analyzed your previous combat performance. Your movement patterns suggest training in 17 different martial arts forms, adapted for your species' unique biomechanical advantages." Jake tilted his head slightly. "You've been watching videos?" "I have absorbed all available data on human combat capabilities," Vexhi confirmed. "I have calculated optimal strategies to counter your demonstrated abilities. You present an interesting challenge, but the outcome is statistically predetermined." "Statistics," Jake mused. "You know, my species has a saying about statistics. I am interested to learn this saying." Jake smiled, and Princess Zarathiel felt something cold run down her spine. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of something that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. "There are 3 kinds of lies," Jake said quietly. "Lies, damned lies, and statistics." "Begin," the referee called. Vexhi moved like lightning, its synthetic muscles and mechanical joints operating at the absolute limits of physics. Its first strike came faster than most organic eyes could follow, aimed with surgical precision at Jake's throat. Jake wasn't there. Not because he had dodged or moved aside, but because he had somehow simply ceased to occupy the space where the strike was aimed. The movement was so subtle, so perfectly timed, that it seemed like the attack had missed by pure chance. Vexhi recalculated instantly, its quantum processors analyzing the failed strike and adjusting its approach. Its second attack was a combination strike, 4 different angles of assault designed to account for every possible evasion. Jake flowed around all 4 strikes like water around stones. "Impossible," Vexhi stated, its synthetic voice carrying a note of confusion that its creators had never intended it to be able to express. "Your movements do not match your species' documented physical limitations." "That's the thing about documentation," Jake said conversationally, as he continued to flow around Vexhi's increasingly frantic attacks. "It's only as good as the person doing the documenting." Princess Zarathiel leaned forward in her seat, her heart racing. She was watching something that shouldn't have been possible. Vexhi was attacking faster than her enhanced eyes could track, but Jake seemed to be existing in the spaces between the attacks, as if he could see the future. "Your species studied our combat footage," Jake continued, his voice never changing despite the lethal dance he was performing. "You analyzed our training methods, our fighting styles, our recorded battles, but you made one critical mistake." "State the nature of this mistake," Vexhi demanded, its attacks becoming more complex and desperate. "You studied how humans fight when they're trying not to hurt people." Jake's first counterattack was so fast that even Vexhi's enhanced sensors almost missed it. A simple palm strike to the synthetic's chest plate, delivered with perfect timing and precision. The sound was like a bell being cracked. Vexhi staggered backward, micro-fractures spreading across its supposedly unbreakable chest armor. "Damage detected," Vexhi announced automatically. "Analyzing impact force. Impossible. Impact exceeded calculated maximum output for human muscular system by factor of 4.7. "You calculated wrong," Jake said simply. Then he moved in earnest. What followed was not a fight so much as a demonstration. Jake flowed around Vexhai like liquid death, each strike perfectly placed to cause maximum damage to the synthetic systems. He didn't waste motion or energy. Every movement served a purpose. Every attack targeted a critical component. Princess Zarathiel watched in horrified fascination as Jake systematically dismantled what was supposed to be the most perfect warrior ever created. His strikes found weaknesses that shouldn't have existed, exploited design flaws that no organic mind should have been able to detect. "How?" she whispered. Her aide, who had been frantically accessing databases during the fight, found the answer. "Your Highness, I've been reviewing human evolutionary history. Their species evolved as persistence hunters, but they were also persistence fighters." "What does that mean?" "It means they didn't just hunt prey across vast distances, Your Highness. They hunted each other. For millions of years, human survival depended on their ability to analyze, understand, and defeat other humans in combat. They evolved to be living weapons specifically designed to kill things that thought like them." Princess Zarathiel felt a chill of understanding. "And Vexhai thinks like them." "More than that, Your Highness. Vexhai is logical, predictable, systematic. It's everything that human combat instincts evolved to defeat." In the arena, Vexhai made its final desperate gambit. It overloaded all its systems simultaneously, trading long-term functionality for a brief period of superhuman capability. Energy coursed through its synthetic body as it became a blur of deadly motion. Jake stopped dodging. Instead, he stepped directly into Vexhai's path and caught the synthetic's fist in his bare hand. The impact should have shattered every bone in his arm, but Jake's body absorbed the force and redirected it with techniques that were older than recorded history. Using Vexhai's own momentum against it, Jake threw the synthetic warrior across the arena with such force that it left a crater in the reinforced wall. Vexhai tried to stand, sparked, and collapsed. "Victor, Jake Morrison of Earth," the referee announced. The arena was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, beings from across the galaxy began to applaud. Not the wild cheering of a bloodsport crowd, but the respectful acknowledgement of masters recognizing something extraordinary. Jake walked over to where Vexhai lay and knelt beside the damaged synthetic. "You fought well," he said quietly. "Your creators should be proud." "I do not understand," Vexhai managed to say through damaged vocal systems. "How did you defeat me? I had calculated every variable." "You calculated every variable you knew about," Jake corrected gently. "But my species has been fighting wars since before we could make fire. We've been killing things that were bigger, stronger, and smarter than us for so long that we forgot we were good at it. You brought logic to a fight with something that was shaped by millions of years of illogical violence." Jake stood and walked toward the exit. As he passed under the royal viewing box, Princess Zarathiel called out to him. "Human Jake," she said formally, "I owe you an apology." Jake stopped and looked up at her. "For what, Your Highness?" "I laughed at your armor because I thought it made you weak. I did not realize that your strength was not in what you wore, but in what you chose not to show." Jake considered this for a moment. "Your Highness, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "What's the most dangerous predator on your home world?" Princess Zarathiel thought for a moment. "The Veltar Shadow Stalker. They're perfectly camouflaged, incredibly fast, and have venom that can kill in seconds." "And how do your people hunt them?" We don't. They're too dangerous. We use technology to avoid them, barriers to keep them away from our cities." Jake nodded. "On Earth, we have a saying. We say that the most dangerous animal on our planet is a human with a sharp stick and time to think." "I do not understand." "Your people learned to avoid danger, Your Highness. My people learned to hunt it down and kill it. We've been doing it for so long that we built a whole civilization just to give ourselves better challenges." With that, Jake walked out of the arena, leaving Princess Zarathiel with a new understanding of what it meant to be human. Later that evening, as she prepared her report on the championship for the Galactic Council, Princess Zarathiel added a personal note that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. We have been approaching human integration into galactic society from the wrong perspective. We have been treating them as a primitive species that needs to be uplifted to our level of technological sophistication. This is an error. Humans are not primitive. They are restrained, and we should be very, very grateful that they choose to remain that way. The report concluded with a formal recommendation that humans be invited to join the Galactic Council not as junior members seeking guidance, but as equals whose capabilities were still not fully understood, and in a small note that she marked for her personal files only, Princess Zarathiel added one final observation. Note to self, never laugh at human armor again. They might take it off.